Welcome everyone to our web event today. I see even people from the mountains made it to join our group. I want to welcome you to this first event that is part of a series on business in emerging markets. And today the focus will be on Latin America, but there's going to be one event on the Indian market and one event later this year on Southeast Asia, which is probably only going to happen end of November. But the main goal is to give you insights into the recent dynamics in these markets and look at how Austrian companies are actually managing the impact of coronavirus in these markets. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sophie Langerhansel. I work for the corporAID platform. For those of you who don't know the corporAID platform, we are an Austrian think tank, I would say, that was initiated by the Austrian NGO IESE. And what we do is we put Austrian business at the center of global sustainable development, because Austrian businesses are key for Austria's contribution to global sustainable development. They are the ones that can provide solutions for the many challenges we're confronted with. How we do that? We try to raise awareness for market opportunities, predominantly in emerging and developing regions, because in these regions, the solutions Austrian companies can provide are of ever increasing demand. What we also try to do is that we improve or help improve framework conditions in Austria in order to give more incentive for Austrian companies to invest in these markets and to expand the business operations there. We work with a lot of Austrian companies that you see here on your screen, but we also collaborate with the Austrian Development Agency, which is our main partner in our ambitions and in reaching our goals. And we also frequently work with the Austrian Chamber of Commerce, and it is internationally known as Advantage Austria. And actually the Chamber of Commerce is today supporting this event. So I want to put many thanks in that direction as well. And now I would like to ask the Austrian Trade Commissioner for Brazil, Klaus Hofstadler of Advantage Austria, on the stage to address a few words to you.
Hello, good morning from São Paulo. It's 10 in the morning here. On behalf of Advantage Austria, or in German Außenwirtschaft Austria, I would like to welcome you all. We are part of the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber, or in German Wirtschaftskammer Österreich. My name is Klaus Hofstadler. I'm the Austrian Trade Commissioner in São Paulo. My team and I assist depending on how the economy is going, between 500 and 1,000 companies from Austria per year in doing business with Brazilian companies. We provide business intelligence and business development services, organize events. Currently, it's exclusively online events. And especially during difficult times, we act as troubleshooters for Austrian companies who run into all kinds of complications. In addition, through media cooperation and social media activities, we spread the word about Austria as a source of innovative and sustainable solutions. So that's it from me at this point, and I look forward to an interesting discussion. Thank you.
We're going to hear more from Klaus after a few presentations. Let me introduce you to today's program. As mentioned, the main goal is to give you some insights into the dynamics in the Latin American markets. Our main input giver will be Julia Prats, that I'm going to introduce to you in more detail in a moment. And then we're going to have a discussion to see how Austrian companies are actually handling those dynamics. How are they mitigating the impact of the coronavirus or the measures that were put in place to handle the coronavirus. And we'll also try to assess whether there's new opportunities for Austrian and European businesses emerging after the crisis, and whether those businesses could actually take a vital role in the sustainable recovery of these markets and contribute to sustainable development there. So we have a lot of questions. First, a few technical things I want to mention. If you go to the right of the main screen, you see, and a few people have already posted in the chat, so you can interact via the chat option. I would strongly invite you, though, to post questions if you have them in the question section, because there, if I see the questions, I will pick them up and I'm going to ask them to our panelists. The questions will be actually voted on, so you can decide which questions you agree on are most important. And then one last section is the poll section, and we're actually going to try that just now by asking you from where you're joining us today. So my colleague put up the poll, and you can now answer, are you joining from Austria? Many people are joining from Austria, as I see. Are you from Brazil or any other Latin American country? Okay, I give it still a few seconds. Well, I said most people join from Austria. Oh, yeah, Brazil. And from other European countries. Well, that's just to introduce you to the system of the polls, because we're going to ask a few more a little bit later on in the program. Getting back to the program, as said, we're going to have a vivid discussion, and I'm going to introduce to you the panelists a little bit later. Just to say, for now, we're very happy that we managed to get all of you together, and that we have two representatives of one of the, I would say, biggest companies in the Latin American market that are based actually in Austria or Europe with us today. So now let me introduce to you, as mentioned before, that the main input is coming from Julia Prats. Julia Prats holds a doctoral degree from the Harvard University and is currently heading the Entrepreneurship department of IESE Business School. And the reason why Mrs. Prats, or Julia, is today giving this input is that she actually wrote a very thorough and very recommendable study on the corporate venturing strategies of European companies in the Latin American market. And the study was published, I think it was in April, so it's very to the point. And yes, Julia, I see you on stage. We're going to pull up your presentation, and we're looking forward to your input.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for the invitation, and also to the whole organization of IESE. And definitely very happy and very honored to be together with my fellow panelists, Ismael, Klaus, and Francisco. So basically, I think I have 10 to 15 minutes to just go through some ideas. And the idea here is to spark some ideas that then will turn into questions that we can discuss later. And basically, I would like to go through two main blocks. The first block would be some insights. All of you probably know Latin America well. I have seen people that are joining from there exactly, and then many of you are also already doing business there. So these insights are just a summary of some interesting insights out there, just to, again, to put a framework. And then second, I would like to talk about some opportunities and recommendations that at least I have seen after working for some years in the area with large corporations, but also with a lot of startups and high growth companies. So that would be the objective. I would say that, first of all, it's you all recognize something that all of us know, that when we talk about Latin America, what we are talking about is a very, very, very diverse universe. So we are talking about 33 different countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. And what that means is different population, level of economic development, easy of doing business, regulatory obstacles, tax burden. All this is different, and it's many times go from one extreme to the other. And that has a huge impact on things that affect directly the way business operate. what's the consumer base, the price levels, the sales channels, the competition, the cost drivers, the landed cost calculations, the import and export regulatory requirements, and so on and so forth. So anything that we say now should be put in that context, that we are saying general things that afterwards need to be pulled down into each different country to get the reality and the real thing. So if we start talking about these different points for I would say as a summary, and I'm sorry that this is very crowded, but I just wanted to put together some of the main ideas, and then we'll talk about them, in a more detailed way. But first of all, we need to start talking about the COVID-19 because this is a crisis that is affecting in a multiple ways to all these countries, and this is not different from our own countries. So basically, the domestic lockdown is driving an immediate fall in the economic activity, and we'll see some numbers afterwards. This is also it's also affected. All the countries are affected also for the slowdown of a global demand, affecting in particular exports, remittances, tourism, and FDI in the region. Together with this, we are suffering a collapse in commodity prices, mainly oil prices, increasing twin deficits. And what that means is that also is affecting some countries heavily on that. And then also, as we have seen, an increased financial volatility due to the capital flights affecting currency depreciation and financial assets value. So I would say that this is common to many countries, and it's not only Latin America, but of course also there. One aspect that we also need to mention, starting with this framework to discuss afterward the opportunities, is that in many Latin American countries, on average, and this is data from OCDE, they are relatively young, but the region has health systems with limited capacity. And this is important given the spread of the pandemic. So specifically, they're expecting or they're spending 4 times less on healthcare than OECD countries. So what that means is that basically, sorry. Okay, so I think I will move the slides. Don't worry about it. So we are having this 4 times less spending. What that means is definitely less capacity for treating the viruses, the people that are infected, and so on and so forth. Also, due to this lockdown and liquidity constraints, and this is a very important point because this is at the same time a problem and a challenge and an opportunity, many SMEs are facing the risk of bankruptcy. And when I say many, we are talking about a huge number of them because of the way they are structured and because of usually the financial strength that they used to have that was already very feeble. So as many as 38% of total workers are vulnerable to this problem, and specifically they don't have social protection. So here, as we see, this is a real challenge, a social challenge, an economic challenge. At the same time, we'll see could be an opportunity. Do not forget that online opportunities are limited, quote unquote, meaning that we still have 60% of households in lower quintile of income that don't have access to Wi-Fi. I think that this is being corrected very fast. And at the same time, it also is another opportunity for many businesses precisely because there is this hole that we can fill. Many of the monetary and fiscal policies that Europe and other advanced economies are trying to play with are there, but are difficult for many countries to put together and use it as a tool for improving the situation. And finally, I would say I think there is a role, and it's a clear role, and we'll see afterwards also the opportunity that we may have with internal cooperation with multilateral institutions around the world. So basically, I would say this is a quick summary of the situation. And if we go to numbers, we can check, there's every day there is different statistics. I would say that it's very difficult to take these numbers as real. These are the numbers we have, but as you know, it depends a lot on how many tests are they really doing, how are they reporting the numbers, and how all this is being put together. So the only thing we know is that there is a real impact, and that some countries are being more affected than others. But as I said, all the numbers should be taken with a grain of salt, because we know the difficulty of getting the right statistics down. In this case, this is also a trend that may help us to understand how this is being affected the real economy. So these are just some graphics from different countries, and it doesn't matter which are the countries. What we see is that after April, we see a complete fall on the Latin American public transit demand, and that's a reflection of how things are being slowed down in the region. On the other hand, I think we should take also a look at the economy in terms of what the economists are saying. And let me just share with you some numbers that I think are interesting, and at the same time are also, it puts hope on the whole picture. So here we have the projections that were done in April 2020, and the projections that have been done now in June. So if we compare the average Latin America and the Caribbean, excluding Venezuela, what we see is that in April, they were expecting a down of the real GDP growth of 4.2. However, in June, this is being put at 9.4, so almost doubling or more than doubling the situation before. However, if you see what is expected in 2021, in April, the projections were less optimistic than the ones that we see now. We're going from a 0.3 in April, and then in June, they revised it to 3.7. So that it's something hopeful. Definitely the down is as I said, double, but also is expected a recovery that could be fast. And if we see that also by different countries, we can see how different it is from Argentina to Peru, let's say, or from Chile to Peru. The different rates. First of all, the projections on the reduction of growth, on the stopping growth and going down deeply, but also the recoveries are also very different. Usually these are numbers that may help to get a sense, but as you know, and it's going to be my message all the time, when we have these numbers, there is a general sense of what's going on. At the same time, there is always opportunities. And I think this is what we will see with many companies finding these opportunities. In terms also, if you want to see it in a graphic where it's very clear that this is April and this is the forecast for next year, it looks like all the countries should go up sooner rather than later, in less than 6 or 7 months from where we are now. As you know, this is being revised every quarter, every month, every week, and numbers again are very unreliable because it depends on what they are measuring and so on and so forth. So I will take these things as a real general framework and just work with it and take it for what it is. I think that I would like to mention two things that may be interesting, because this is something that is more structural. And in this case, what I want to show here is the difficulties that the whole region is having in catching up in general in the GDP per capita, that other emerging economies are being faster, specifically Asia, being faster in catching up with other developed economies. And this is something that is more worrisome, because what it means is that even if there is improvements, there are other emerging economies improving faster. And that is a double competition for the region that we are now studying or looking at. So this is, I would say, this is an an important point, and it doesn't matter if the number is 5 or 6, but what is very important is to realize that other emerging economies are being able to run faster than the Latin American economies, again, on average. And why is this happening? And as we saw at the beginning, we talked about also the financial volatility. And I think this is just a summary, right? When you have a problem like as we had COVID-19, money flights to quality. And this is something that has been experienced not only with this pandemic, but with any unrest that means, terrorist attacks or any other things that may put the region in a problem. And what we see there usually is that usually the capital, leaves the place, and this is a vicious circle that puts in trouble the economy that is being affected, because the more capitals go out and there is more outflow of capitals, there is a higher inflation, less capital, higher borrowing costs. What that means is a weaker economy. If the economy is weaker, less money comes in, and so on and so forth. So I think this is what probably puts us on a concern for the region. As I said, these are macroeconomic effects that we cannot avoid to put in place. Finally, there is also an important I would say an important factor that we should not forget, and this is about how these countries have been managing growth in the last years. And I would say we are missing in the competitive dynamics of the general region, we are missing something that is very important. There is a study done by McKinsey that talks about the double missing. And the double missing is basically we are missing mid-sized companies that would help to have a more quality or a better quality companies, and people that are more professionalized, if you want to say that way, in middle-sized companies. Now what we find is a lot of small companies, less professionalized, and that with a lot of problems that we'll mention later, and then also the large corporations. So I see this is a very important point on the need of helping these companies to grow fast and grow in a sustainable way, and we'll see that in a second. The second missing is also the middle class consumers. And why is that? Because as soon as, and we all know that, and it has been, for instance, a very clear policy in China to raise that middle class consumers, that would help because they spend money and they fuel the domestic demand and the investment. And this is something, again, that has been growing slower than in other economies. I would say we would, if we could push both structural competitive dynamics, I think that it would be outstanding for the region. And in fact, McKinsey says that a gain of more than 1,000 per capita would mean a 1 trillion economic movement in the region. So I think that this is something that we need, again, to take into account, together with what we said, these other effects about the difficulties that the region is having in reaching up the other developing countries, and also, of course, the developed countries. Well, this is just a statistic just to show that basically this is what we have. The 5% of earners concentrate a quarter of the consumption. So to summarize all this intro, I just wanted to maybe summarize it in this way, to say, on the one hand, we have all these commodity problems that are coming from, in this case, China as a big effect in the world, and affecting specifically some countries, and in this case, Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia. The problem of external debt that we didn't go into, because I think this is a whole lecture in itself, where many other countries, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Mexico, and Peru, are being affected. And finally, also the dealings of the domestic problems, the internal problems, plus, in this case, the pandemic. So if we take these three circles and we look for the intersections, what we find are I would say 3 countries very affected by commodities and external debt, 3 more countries very affected by the domestic dealings and external debt. And what we see is that there is 3 countries that are really having trouble by the 3 effects heavily. Okay, so that may seem that this is not a very positive outlook. I would say this is, as I said, this is a framework that we cannot ignore. But usually, when you have these frameworks, what you always find is new opportunities, and this is precisely what I just want to touch upon in the next 5 minutes. Basically, the first thing that I would recommend, or what we see definitely after working with so many corporations in all these countries, and basically I could say that we have been working around Latin America, specifically more on 6 big economies, more than others, for the study that we have done. But I can give you the numbers later if you are interested. But we have been working with more than 184 subsidiaries of 107 corporate giants in 19 different cities in 6 countries in Latin America, working with more than 153, more than 130, CEOs and CIOs. So this is part of the last study that we have done, but we have been working with many in the region. And one of the things that we have seen again and again and again is the problem of productivity and efficiency. Many times you see an increase in the workforce and being all these young people being incorporated in the workforce. But the problem is being that given that is cheap, that is not so difficult to put them into the labor force, there is no effort or there's no incentives in being more productive, more effective, more efficient. This is something that I think there is a huge room for improvement, and that in fact, this is what would make the companies that we have seen there much more sustainable, in the long run. And that's something that we are all of us looking for. So sustainability, not companies that are so feeble that as soon as there is a crisis, they cannot sustain what they have. And we all know that for this productivity, is very clear that we have now very clear tools, industry automation, digitalization, as part of the tools that we have now for bringing that productivity increase that the region needs. This is a huge opportunity for European companies. This is a huge opportunity for American companies, of course, to bring in all these tools that may help in that direction, because this is one of the things that I would really see as a need in the region. If we take a look at the sectors that are going to need this, definitely everything that is related to online working, definitely e-commerce, definitely everything related to health, and everything related to data. And when I say data, goes from security to managing artificial intelligence, to machine learning, and so on and so forth. All these are areas that we have seen companies growing at 2 digits in every single region, even if in every single country, even if the region as a whole, as I mentioned, has this framework that could be not so positive. But again, the industry is needing all these things, and there are sectors that are really going forward with all this. The second element that I see as an opportunity are partnerships. And this is something that we have also seen very heavily. And I'm just going to show some numbers. Of course, public partnerships, initiatives that we have that are now in place. One probably is very well known. The World Bank just announced in July 32,000 million for technical projects in the region. And we all know that these are projects that are long-term, that is difficult to access, and so on and so forth. But the money is there, and there is possibilities specifically for innovation in everything that has to do with internet access, because I remember I mentioned there is only 60% of the population that has access to Wi-Fi at this point. Definitely improving education, that's the base of, I would say, of everything, and things related to healthcare. Also, the Inter-America Development Bank has been putting together a lot of money, in this case more for social projects, but you can see also in the list projects that are related to internet, projects that are related to health, and so on, water and sanitation, and so on and so forth. This is the public sector, and every country has very different initiatives. These are these multilateral institutions that bring this into the table. But then something that has been very uplifting, and I would say that puts a lot of hope on the table, is how many companies, large corporations, are working in what I call collaborative venturing. What is corporate venturing? Not collaborative, corporate venturing. Corporate venturing is the work that large corporations do with small startups, in general, technological startups that bring innovation inside the firm. We will talk about this with my fellow panelists, because many of them are very innovative companies that I'm sure they have been using some of these mechanisms of open innovation. But what is very surprising is to see how the region is partnering not only with these small firms in the region, but also bringing startups from outside the region or large corporations from not the region working with the startups in the region. So I think that we have a bridge that it has been booming in the last years. I would say 5 years, 3 to 5 years have been booming. And at the beginning of the study, we found very interesting companies, and you can see some of them here, working with all these entrepreneurs, startups, high growth companies that are bringing a lot of innovation in very different areas. So, for instance, just as an example, look at here by country in financial services. These are 12 sectors with the highest adoption of corporate venturing through the different subsidiaries that they are working in. And in many cases, when I talk about subsidiaries, what I'm showing here is multinational companies that may be headquartered in the US, maybe headquartered in Europe, or may be headquartered in Latin America, that what they do is through their subsidiaries in different countries, what they are doing is learning, collaborating, partnering with startups and high scale-ups in the region, in the country where they are in. For that, and as you can see, across sectors, financial sector, the information technologies, management consulting, telecommunications, energy, and so on and so forth, machinery, and so on and so forth. So I think this is a good example, and there is a lot of hope on that. Just to show, look at Colombia, just talking about the ecosystem of fintech. This is huge number of companies that they have been partnering and working with these large corporations. And just to finalize, 45% of these companies are headquartered in Europe. Is the largest number of multinational companies going to Latin America and through their subsidiaries partnering in the region with these innovative companies. So I think this is something we can discuss later, see how they are doing it, and understand if this is something that we can have in our umbrella. Basically, you have a lot of data on by country if you want to take the report and take a look and see which are the companies by country that they are doing that. So just to finalize, to say that there is challenges, definitely, and we cannot forget about them because affect everything. But I see two big opportunities. One is bringing into the region anything that helps productivity, because this is what the companies need. And second, think more about partnerships, because that helps basically to improve and to enrich everything that we can bring there, network access, innovation, our experience in Europe, bringing there cost reduction, risk mitigation. So there's tons of good opportunities to do that. So thank you very much. And Sophie, thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And also thank you very much for the very precise recommendations of how to proceed in these markets or even enter these markets. I now want to actually remind you to post your questions in the question section if you like to. And then I would like to properly introduce to you our two representatives of Austrian or European companies. First, let me ask Ismael Daneluz on stage. He's the Vice President for the Latin American region of the Austrian company Palfinger. Palfinger, as many of you might know, is manufacturing very innovative lifting solutions like cranes. So Ismael, may I ask you to briefly present your business model or business operations in the Latin American market, and afterwards we're gonna discuss the impact of Corona on it. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much, Sophie, for the invitation. For me, it's a pleasure to be here on these discussions and to cooperate with the insights that we have in our experience here in Latin America. I'm based now in Brazil, but we have already a long history acting in LATAM countries. So for me, it's a pleasure to be on this panel discussion. I hope that I can give some insights and a bit of our experience and learnings during these decades of activities in LATAM. As you already mentioned about Palfinger, perhaps not everybody is aware or has this information, but Palfinger is headquartered in Bergheim in Austria. It's a company with around 11,000 employees nowadays and 1.7 billion revenue. And we have been acting in LATAM since the 70s through exports. I want to before going to the history, to understand how we have been dealing in this region. It's very interesting to hear from Julia, let's say, a deep dive in this region, which is complex, it's not easy. We have very volatile markets. However, there are big opportunities that you can find if you are open to deal with the risks that are presented in these countries. So nowadays here in LATAM, we have two main companies which are acting in this segment. We first started with exports in the 70s, and then after decades of experience in these markets and knowing the difficulties and understanding the needs of these specific customers and the maturity level of our region, the group decided to have a local footprint, because this was the way that we could mitigate all the risk and this instability. So the group took the decision. First of all, one acquisition was done around 20 years ago, which was a Brazilian company acquired, which is called Madal. And then on a second stage, after we start focusing much more in the whole region, we also expanded our operations into Argentina. And December last year, we concluded another acquisition there of an Argentinian companies. These two companies, originally Madal and Hidrogruber, they are with 80 years of experience in this region. So these are companies that are used to manage the risky or the volatile markets. And they were the market leaders by far in these two countries. And for Palfinger, it's a way to be successful is to have a local presence, to have the right partnership, and to invest on the long term. What we see, what we learn is that our customers are looking for long-term partnerships, and the only way that we think that is possible is that you're international, but you are also present, understanding the customer needs and acting accordingly. So this is a bit of our history that you can see. I will show you on the next slide, just as a summary, how is our setup, our business model nowadays. So we have main two production sites in Brazil and Argentina. We have some branches also in São Paulo state, Sorocaba, and also in Buenos Aires. But besides that, if you look on the map, on the right side, we have a very extensive sales and service network, which was developed already starting in the 70s. So as Julia mentioned, 33 countries are part of LATAM. We have now presence with partners and dealers in around 17, 18 countries nowadays. So it's already a long-term relation that we have, and as we were learning from this market, we decided to make this next step and invest and have also direct sales and have our own structure in the two main countries for our business, which is Brazil and Argentina. So this is a bit of our business model, how we are acting. So we produce products within the region, for the region, but besides that, we are also supplying equipment from all over the world to LATAM markets. So the way that we find is to find this balance or flexibility. As markets are very volatile, we have many other factors impacting economy, political, and so on. So we find a way to have a balance, structure to act in the best way to the group. If you are not so aware of our product portfolio, that's our acting segments. Below you see which are the sectors which are mainly focused here in Latin America, in all the countries where we are active. So there is a very diverse range of customers and segments which we are participating nowadays. And also on the portfolio side, we supply lifting equipment. We are the global market leader, and also already for many years the market leader in Latin America. So I just wanted to give you a short introduction to understand our business, and I'm really open for your questions and to the further discussion now. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Ismael. You can actually just stay on stage if you like. I now would like to introduce you just briefly to another company and Mr. Francisco Carrara, who's the president of the region of South America of RHI Magnesita. Again, many people might know RHI Magnesita, which actually was established as a merger of a Brazilian and an Austrian companies, and is today listed at the London Stock Exchange. And I also would like to ask you, Francisco, to briefly, as a foundation for the discussion later, to present your operations in the Latin American market. Thank you.
Okay, Sophia, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and participate in this panel. So, my name is Francisco Carrara. I'm the president of RHI Magnesita for South America. I have been working for RHI Magnesita over the past 20 years. And I'm going to give you an overview of our operations in South America and a brief overview of the world as well. So please, the next one. So RHI Magnesita is a fruit of a merger of an Austrian company, RHI, and Magnesita from Brazil. Those two big companies combined, now we are the largest refractory company in the world. So in 2017, we merged and became the largest and the best refractory company in the world. Some figures: we have more than 13,000 employees across 35 countries. Our revenue in 2019 was 2.9 billion euros. We shipped to more than 125 countries, and we are verticalized, having some raw material sites. Geographically speaking, South America is responsible for 16% of the total revenue, 75% of which is from Brazil. Also, roughly 18% of the total volume produced in RHI Magnesita is in South America. And as we are talking about Latin America, we also have two strategic plants in Mexico. Okay. But what do we make? Refractories. I don't know, few people know refractory. I could say that refractories are products derived from some minerals which resist a high level of temperature. I mean, up to 1800 degrees Celsius. But RHI Magnesita supply much more than that. But we need more time to talk about that. I would like only to show you here what is made by using our refractories. So refractories are in our lives on daily basis. So to produce 1 ton of steel, we need to use, for example, 10 kilos of refractories. And the same you have for cement, glass, aluminum, and other materials. So when you see a car, bear in mind that at least 11 kilos of refractories were utilized to produce this car. And you have the same for buildings, hotels, schools, hospitals, and so on. This is a brief, this is a summary of our agile Magnesita business. In South America, we have 12 factories in Contagem and 7 mines divided into Bahia, state of Bahia, and Minas Gerais. So thank you very much. Having said that, I hand over to you, Sophie.
Thank you very much, Francisco. And I see that Ismael already joined us back on stage. Thanks for presenting your business models and your operations in the Latin America market. Now I would like to address 2 questions to both of you to start the discussion. Namely, how are you today navigating through the crisis? What were the main impacts that you could feel as a company, and how did you mitigate or manage those impacts? Maybe Ismael, you start first.
Okay, sure. Yeah, just as a context, here in Latin America or in Brazil, we were coming from years of, let's say, difficult years of recession in our business. And at the end of last year, there was already a recovery in our business segment. So we had a lot of order intake. So we had a very good volume of business. And before we were hit by the crisis, the expectations were huge for this year. We were supposed to be one of the best years in our operations in LATAM. And then we are hit by COVID-19, and it was not easy. The impacts were directly affecting our production facilities. So first of all, what we had to do, close down our production factories in Brazil and Argentina for 3 weeks. This was the immediate actions that we had to do. We focus a lot on communication with our employees. There was a lot of anxiety and fear about what is going to happen with the people, with our business, with our big order book that we have by that time. How would this impact our customers? How we would go through these difficult times with a lot of uncertainty. So first, just some insights. We had our sales reduced by 50% on the first 2 months. Customers asking to cancel orders or to review orders. We were afraid of our liquidity levels too, because the customer would not be paying accordingly what we had already sold. Anyways, it was tough, but I think we first to mitigate this risk, we had a task force on a global level to act in every market. So we were able first to look on our employees, and this was the first actions. We were looking to keep the health and the safety of our people. So a lot of actions to guarantee the health, people going remote. So we still have until today, since middle of March, all our indirect personnel working on remote base. So this is already 6 months, and we were managing to go through that. We also were acting very close to our end customers to understand their fears, to keep them calm, because the situation was really unprecedented and we did not know how to act. Fortunately, we managed to keep our order book, so we had very, very few cancellations. We are also committed with our supply chain to guarantee the delivery of our equipments, which we already had committed, and many customers with contracts to fulfill. So after returning from these 3 weeks of shutdown, we were able to come back with 50% capacity in our operations in the 2 plants, main plants that we have here. But we managed to go through the situation, and after 2 months where we had our sales impacted, let's say the business came on a decent level back, and nowadays we are on the same levels of volumes that we had before the crisis, fortunately. So it was not an easy time. We also used this opportunity based on our setup here in LATAM. We have a local footprint, and many other competitors from us, they are only located in Europe, so they were hardly impacted at the beginning, and we had our operations and a delay from the virus arriving in LATAM compared to Europe. So we also took aggressive market actions to gain market share, and this happened, and it was very, very good realization that we have done and successful, as we had the opportunity to produce locally. So many actions. We still see that there is a lot of uncertainty. I think the worst is gone, but we are really cautious on our liquidity, on our contracts, and how we are behaving now from the future on. We had to adapt very fast, react very fast, being digital, not being able to travel and to attend our customers. But after a few weeks, I think all the team learned and had them the right mindset to go through these difficult times.
Thank you. Probably to you, Francisco, the question. I mean, you're also a company with a strong local footprint. How did you manage the crisis? Do you also see that factor as a sort of benefit with regards to resilience in such a crisis?
Yes, as also many companies, we also was impacted by the COVID-19. So first of all, we create a crisis committee very fast, and based on that, we select 3 pillars to be focused on. The first one, safety, in order to ensure a safe environment to our employees and their families. The second one, continuity, because we, IESE Magnesita, and our customers, we are part of the essential business to produce, for example, hospital equipment, respirators. They need steel and refractories. And the third pillar was liquidity. So we drew up an action plan to protect our cash and to maintain our liquidity, which was good. In terms of impact, I can summarize that by talking about our 2 main markets, which was cement market and the steel market. As for the cement market, surprisingly, in the first half, we had the first half of since 2018 in Brazil. For the second half, we expect to increase the production by 5% for cement. So it's a little bit different from steel and a little bit different from South America outside Brazil. So in Brazil, we had this behavior, but outside Brazil, the cement market dropped dramatically. So some plants were shut down, and now in the second half, they are turning on again. As for the steel market, the Q2 was, I think, the worst quarter of the history for the steel market in Brazil, in South America. And for IESE Magnesita here, it was almost the same, because we depend on the volumes of steel and cement, right? And in Q3, we have a slightly improved, and we expected for the quarter that we have the same level of production that we had in 2019. So those were the impacts in our main actions to deal with the crisis in South America.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for this insight. I would now like to ask Klaus and Julia back on stage and actually remind you to post questions. I already see a few being posted there in the question section. My question to you, Klaus, actually would now be, now we saw two perspectives on the local market of companies that are very well integrated in the local environment. Now, many Austrian companies are exporting to Brazil. They don't have sites on the ground. They are probably much smaller than RHI Magnesita or Palfinger. Could you give us maybe a broader view of how Austrian companies are dealing with the situation in the Latin American markets, or Brazil in particular?
Yeah, so I have a better understanding of the Brazilian market. So again, it's of the 200 companies who invested here in Brazil, the majority of them have basically marketing operations here, after sales service, distribution, but no own production here. This especially is relevant to the machinery producers from Austria. You know, complex machinery usually don't have such a huge market here. You sell 3 or 4 machines a year, or maybe 10, so it doesn't justify a major operation, different from a company like Palfinger, who really has a huge market for cranes and lifting systems. So yeah, for them it was an extreme impact, of course. So just yesterday, the official numbers for the second quarter were released for Brazil. I think it was a recession of 9.8%, so a massive decline. Just to put it in perspective, that means that the GDP level of Brazil is now at the same level as 2009. So that shows that the overall economy is not doing great for a long time. So we are through 5 years of recession now, basically, or stagnation. And now that it finally looked as if it would come back nicely in end of 2019 and 2020, now coronavirus hit the market again. So it really depends on what market the Austrian companies are serving. So many of them, because of the good developments, already had existing contracts with Brazilian customers, mainly large corporations, major groups in infrastructure or agro industry or commodities business, who all actually got prepared for a great year. And well, reality is tough right now, but we all believe that there will be a stronger comeback in the next quarters. So it really depends on who your market is. Those who work, for example, for the automotive industry, for the carro popular, as you would call it here, the middle class cars, they are taking a huge impact. And I'm sure that Francisco can see that as well, or even Ismael with Palfinger, who also services these kind of industries. Just this morning, by chance, I ran into the vice president for human resources of one of the major car producers, and he says that on Friday they have to release a major restructuring program where they're going to lay off thousands of employees because they basically have a huge overcapacity. So there are bad outlooks for certain sectors. Other sectors like agribusiness is doing really well, has continued to grow. Any crisis year in Brazil, agribusiness has outperformed the market by far. The commodities business has very positive projections because of China's programs to revamp their economy that also took a hit now. So there are positive outlooks. It really it depends on what market. And of course, there's one major issue for exporters, it's the exchange rate. So the exchange rate took a major hit. We're now at, if we take the euro, it's now at 6.5 reais. In end of 2019, it was, so we basically took a drop of like 40% or 50%. So it's really complicated for exporters now. So if they have necessary machinery for an important segment that's growing, yes, they have still opportunities. Many of them are still fulfilling contracts that have been signed already. For the highly impacted industries, it's tough.
Thank you very much. I'm now looking to the the questions that were posted. There was actually one interesting question that I wanted to ask as well, but I'm going to keep it for a little bit later. Now, I would like to, in between, come back to you, Julia. You mentioned a few opportunities that can also, that are still valid for the Latin American market, for that European companies could actually benefit from. To me, the question is, what is, like, how do companies have to change their strategies with regards to these markets? Does something change after the crisis? Will they have to change their mindset? Will there be a different form of collaboration with local companies? Or like, is it also an opportunity to rethink business models that are actually working to enter these markets? Yep. What is your take on this?
Well, I would say that there are two. I can answer in two ways. The first one is there is an opportunity for restructuring. That's definitely what's going to happen, not only at the mid-sized companies, but also the large corporations are going to be restructuring. Restructuring means putting in place a lot of activities, processes, and ways of doing things differently. Usually what that means also is investment in IT, is investment in processes that make productivity higher. So I think here there is a whole area where European companies can help, because many times, and this is very clear, Europe has gone through that already and has tried to improve processes in terms of being more effective and more efficient in doing things. So this is something that we can, cross-sell, help and try to implement in these places. So I think this is one thing. The second thing is we will find a lot of companies that are in trouble. What that usually means is that if you are in a liquidity position that is positive, and this is what we are also seeing here in Europe, is the best moment for buying. Is the best moment for consolidating some kind of small companies that could be interesting because the prices are going to be the right ones, or lower than probably not the right ones for the owners, but basically an opportunity for large corporations. And in some way, this is sustainable, because some companies, if they don't have the right size, will not be competitive in the long run. So many people believe that when you buy a company, you are destroying value. I think many times it's destroyed because it's not well done. But many times, if you continue being small and you don't consolidate part of this segment with better management practices, with better management in general, what happens is that at the end, this is the death for all these other companies, for all these companies. So I would say that large corporations and also European corporations in this sense should take a look at very good corporations that may be looking for that buyer to continue in business in a different way, but continue being an ongoing concern.
Thank you. Just a general comment. If anyone of the panel wants to comment on statements, please just unmute your microphones and go for it. If there's no comment on that aspect, which I think is very interesting, and already touches on one question I want to ask. Oh, Francisco, you want to add something? No.
Yeah, just to reinforce what Julia have said. In our case, talking about RAJ Magnesita, during this period of crisis, we are speeding up our investments. For example, in Brazil right now, in 2020 and 2021, we are going to invest more than 80 million euros here in Contagem to make this factory 4.0 industry, modernizing this complex that you have here, because it is one of the largest of the world, but this is from the 40s. So we are going to bring the technology to here. And also, we're going to invest more 30 million euros in Brumado, a small city north of Brazil in Bahia, but where we have one of the biggest mines of magnesite of the world. So we're going to build a kiln there, also based on 4.0 industry, IoT, AI, and so on. we have in Untitled, Austria, our excellence center, and we are going to have the same in Brazil. Talking about M&A, yes, before the crisis, we were looking for even big companies, but now we are a little bit care with that, but we continue to looking for small and selective companies, just to reinforce what you said, Julia.
Yeah, good, excellent. And I would say there is an advantage also on that, because when you are coming with this new 4.0 that you are mentioning, not having legacy and being able to implement new things, it's going to be faster, because you are going to need really new talent. You are going to need, many things that will, that I think puts together a good prospect for people around, for having better jobs and with more value. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Just to add one more point, when we advise our Austrian companies to whether to invest or to keep exporting, it really is that we see that 5 years ago, when I assumed the office in 2016 or 4 years ago, we had 250 Austrian subsidiaries in Brazil. Now we have 200. What happened? The smaller ones with really very tiny operations in terms of sales, but actually a little too much staff and a little too much overhead, they had to close down. We really talk about 5 years of a complicated economy in Brazil, whereas the larger ones, they took advantage of M&A opportunities. They increased, and what all of the companies here did, basically all of them, they really learned how to restructure, how to become more efficient, how to outsource specific services. Because if you don't have the scale in Brazil, if you build in all the little tiny departments that a large company needs, and this happened to a lot of companies, like having the labor law department and having the tax department. This is a huge cost for a smaller company, so scale really matters in Brazil. If you're large, you basically need the same advice as if you're small, so it makes total sense to be big. For those who are small, it makes more sense to export and have as lean as possible a presence in Brazil, and I imagine this goes for most of Latin America.
Right. If I can add on this topic, just getting the comment that Klaus brought before on the exchange rate, this year is 40-50% depreciation of the Brazilian real. And this means for European companies, if you want to invest now, companies are more accessible, it's cheaper to do investments, it's the right timing if you look on this actual context. Of course, we have the COVID situation and the instability, volatility of the market. But what we have executed last year, for instance, the acquisition in December of a company in Argentina, was based considering the context that we have. So what I mentioned on my introduction is, if you want to be successful in Latin America, you need to be here on the long term. Customers are looking for a company they can trust and they can have a long-term relationship. And these markets are very volatile. We know that 1 year we have great GDP growth and we have a very, let's say, benefit exchange rate. 1 year after, the situation changed completely. So instead of producing locally, it's better to import. So I think flexibility is key to be successful here. And this is also what we have been doing in the last years, to adapt to these markets, which are changing really fast. But at the end, if you're looking at customers and to serve your customers, you need to be there on the long term. So you need to play the game and adapt to these changing situations. And in our experience, the only way to do that is having this local footprint and adjusting our capacities. When it makes sense to import or bring from Europe, we import. When we focus more on local capabilities, we do so. So it's the way that we see success, and we keep investing and focusing in the markets where we see a lot of potential. And LATAM is a huge continent, it's still an emerging country, a lot of potential for growth. So it's a good time to start now, because if you wait too much, it can be too late, or other companies will do so, will take the opportunities.
Thanks a lot. a question that was now brought up by one of the participants that are listening to our discussion is whether the COVID crisis will actually also trigger opportunities with regards to sustainable reactivation of the economy. So it actually goes into one question that I wanted to ask to the panel, whether there's an opportunity in this crisis to build back better, and particularly what could the role or the vital contribution of Austrian businesses be in that regard. So please, whoever wants to say something. I know RJI, Magnesita, Francisco, you invested a lot in
yes. Could
sustainability.
you please put one slide to me? I think the slide in. Yeah. Yes. As a global company and listed on London Stock Exchange, we have sustainable targets in alignment with both our 2025 strategy and also with UN. So at the bottom of this slide, you can see some targets that you have and that we are committed to achieve by 2025. So as for CO2 emissions, for example, we are going to reduce it by 15%. It seems to be small, but this is huge, and we have invested a lot in research. We have one department in our research in Austria and in Brazil, 100% dedicated to study how to reduce CO2 emissions. The same with recycling. We are going to recycle at least 10% of our materials. Currently, we have been recycling 6%, so I'm sure that we can do more. And diversity. Also have been improving gender diversity in leadership. We want to have 33% of gender diversity in leadership positions. So those are some examples that you have. And on top of that, we have another. I'm proud to present this project here because this was born during the crisis, the pandemic crisis. Its name is Sowing Love. So we help 50 families from 5 places where we have operations in Brazil to start a small business, to produce masks. So they produce those masks. We have bought from them roughly more than 70,000 masks, which generated 50,000 euros for them, and benefited more than 25,000 people. So this is during the crisis. And besides that, we have investing in 25 projects in Brazil, in Northeast, and here in Southeast, in Belo Horizonte, Contagem. And we have more than 10 people benefited with those projects. 10,000 people, I'm sorry. 10,000 people. So those are one of the examples that you have. And just to finalize, this was part of our 2025 strategy. And even with the coronavirus, we are keeping the same enthusiasm and the same projects and the same investments. And in opposite, some of them we are speeding up. So just to finalize that.
Thank you very much. So I would take away that Austrian companies can contribute by being a good corporate citizen, I would say, and invest in the community, and also by transferring certain sustainability standards to these markets. Anyone else has a perspective on that, what Austrian companies could contribute to build back better?
Yes, if I may take the stage. So you have to distinguish, I would say, between, can you hear me? Does it work? Yeah. I think we have to distinguish between companies who are Brazilian large companies who are part of global value chains, and companies who are just targeting the Brazilian market. So I think there are enormous opportunities for Austrian companies with solutions for sustainable solutions, for renewable energy solutions, etc., with large Brazilian corporations. So there are many examples already happening. So, for example, Fronius, his Austrian company, has done great with this push for solar energy in Brazil. Right now, a large Brazilian company called IESE, the Brazilians know it. It's a large ethanol and sugar producing company. Just published that they're using Inio Jenbacher's biogas engines for a cogeneration project. If you look at logistics companies that are involved in transport of commodities, like Humo, for example, they need to put as much on rail as possible, because they're global clients and they're the part at the value chains they're part of. They expect them to work clean, sustainable, and in accordance with human rights issues. This is also an important issue. So if you have solutions for safety of workers, if there are solutions for safety of communities, of how to involve communities, consultancy services. So there is a broad range of opportunities. I think that the good advice, or the advice that I would give, is always look at potential corporate customers for your services. Don't look so much on the government side of it, because the government projects are usually complicated, time-consuming, and the population who might be targeted doesn't really believe in it in many cases. So whenever you have the chance to work with major Brazilian companies, there are interesting and really long-term opportunities.
Thank you very much. I mean, with regards to a very specific market, there's one question that has been brought up, but which is Uruguay, and I don't know if actually one of you could answer that. But someone is asking whether Uruguay, who apparently had a very rapid and decisive response to Corona, and makes a very positive example in Latin America, whether Uruguay should be given more attention, and perhaps also more attention as a business gateway to the South American and Latin American market. And I mean, there was a question before, and that relates to that, which is about the Brazilian market as a hub to enter the rest of the Latin American markets. So maybe someone could comment on either the role of Uruguay as a hub to Latin American to enter the Latin American market, or Brazil and its role.
So I can comment a bit on that. We have been also studying Uruguay, because we are now expanding our operations in LATAM, and Uruguay is a very, let's say, stable country in the context of LATAM. Also, there are a lot of incentives for investments in Uruguay, they on taxation and easy to make business there, to open a business. Uruguay, the issue of Uruguay, what is written on the question, it's a very small market compared to our region here. So if you compare to Brazil, to Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Uruguay is a smaller market. But if you look on the policy that they have to attract companies, they are very interesting. If you want to have a hub for LATAM, it's considered for many companies. It has been growing the last years. More investments in this country due to this easy to make business there and the openness to international companies. The other question about Brazil, I think normally when European companies are looking LATAM, they want to have a robust company with a very huge internal market, what Brazil has to offer. Also a safe company to invest, where you do not have so many risks. So Brazil normally is the preferred option due to this huge market, young population that we have, huge resources as a country, and still, let's say, underdeveloped market in many segments that will for sure grow. We grow 2 digits per year. So for a European company, this is a lot, but for the market, this is normal here in the context of Latin America. Of course, as I mentioned, there is a lot of volatility and risks involved, but if companies find the right balance between risk and return, that is always the secret, how much you are open to take the risk, to take the opportunities. The only way is that you are here investing and understanding the detail of this market and being flexible to adjust.
Thank you very much. I like that everyone said there's going to be many more opportunities, even though now they are limited, but we are counting on that the crisis eventually is going to be over at one point. And I would actually like to leave it with that, with a positive note at the end, unless someone on the panel wants to stress some perspective that hasn't been mentioned and that it's valuable. So I'm gonna know. I think I like the result of our discussion. I don't think I do really like the result of our discussion, and I really want to thank all of you for joining the panel today. We will send out the presentations to the participants of this panel, and also if you have feedback for us, we're going to leave the chat open here, so everyone who wants to give us some feedback or suggest new topics that we could bring in those web events, please post them there. One last note, and I would ask my colleague to pull up the slide. As mentioned at the beginning, this was part of a web event series on emerging markets, where the goal is to just, as now, give you a little bit of insights into how Austrian companies are navigating through Corona in certain regions of the world. And our next web event is going to be on the 1st of October. It's going to be focused on the Indian markets, and we have a guest speaker that's actually based in India with the IDFC Institute, Ruben Abraham, who's going to give, similar to Julia now, is going to give us an overview of the recent dynamics in the Indian market. So as mentioned, we're going to leave the chat open for a little while, but that's it from my side, and I want to thank the whole group of panelists one more time. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as well, and I hope we stay in touch and keep talking about these interesting topics. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Sophia, and everybody else, Klaus, Ismael, and Francisco. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Welcome.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sophie. Congratulations to organize that. And thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to participate with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.